Beautiful. Okay, welcome everyone to our topic today. Let me pull up our PowerPoint and share the screen so that we can begin our discussion. Today is our Coptic Health Workshop on the topic of getting into medical school. We're gonna do a bunch of questions and answers. That's all this is. Before we begin, I was hoping our four panelists, you guys wouldn't mind saying something about yourself. Starting with Mark Gerges, please, sir.
Yeah, I'll start. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark. I grew up here in Hawaii, went to undergrad in California, and now I'm back here for medical school. I think I'm pretty excited to talk about this topic. I'm on my school's interview committee and a part of our mentorship program where we work with college students getting into med school. So I'm excited for this day.
Wonderful. Next, Jessica, would you be okay to share about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually a third-year family medicine resident in Southern California in the Inland Empire. Just signed my contract for my first job. I'm a little bit out of the getting into medical school phase, but hopefully I can help you guys out.
Wonderful. Lauren, would you be okay to give us a little background?
Sure. So I'm a third-year internal medicine resident at UCLA Olive View, which is the county hospital for UCLA. I am going to do fellowship at UC Irvine next year in endocrinology.
That's amazing. And Midhat, please.
Hi guys, I'm a first year resident and I'm actually going into diagnostic radiology. So I'm doing a year of internal medicine first, and then I'll be starting radiology residency next year at UC Irvine. I didn't know I was gonna get to work with Lauren.
Awesome, I'll see you around.
And I went to UCI for undergrad and med school, and yeah, I'm sticking around there for residency.
How exciting. Okay, thank you guys for the introduction. If you don't mind, we're gonna jump right into the questions. So just a quick housekeeping. If anyone who's a participant, if you do have any questions along this discussion, please put it in the chat. If we have time at the end, we will address it. And then of course, panelists, if you wouldn't mind putting some contact info, just so that the participants can reach out to you if they have further questions, if you're okay with it. Okay, so thank you guys for introducing yourself. Let's start off with the main question. So why did you choose medicine? If it's okay to just everyone answer in the same order that you introduce yourselves. Please, Mark.
Yeah, so for me, I was one of the nerds who liked learning and trying to figure out why. Like I remember during my calculus class in high school, when we found out why the area of a circle was pi r squared, it like blew my mind. I also like people, and being Egyptian, I think my mom brainwashed me as a little kid to like medicine before I realized I liked it myself. And the more time I spent interacting with people and using my hand and my brain in ways that felt that I got a sense of teamwork and made a little bit of a difference, felt good. So I ended up pursuing it to improve health. You have to make someone feel better, and that's when true healing happens.
Wonderful. Jessica, please.
So what aspects stood out to me compared to the other healthcare professions? I want to say it follows kind of in the same line what Mark was saying. It was kind of always like in the back of my head. I think goes back from the third grade when I dissected my first owl pellet and fish. I was the only one in the class that wanted to do it. I was probably a weirdo in that sense. Since then, just been volunteering in hospitals since the age of 14, and there was something different about being a physician versus the other professions, because you get to see a whole range of things and treat a whole range of things, as well as learn about physiology, and not just in one particular field, but in like all of the anatomy as well. And the more I did volunteering, the more I did my shadowing, the more I did like international, I don't know if you guys heard that. International mission trips, I just knew it was a fit for me.
Great. So kind of similar, but it's kind of like the Egyptian traditional kind of way of interested in medicine. But my family immigrated here when I was 12 years old, so kind of middle school age when, awkward age. And then my mom was a physician in Egypt, so I think she had a big influence on me wanting to do medicine. I traveled a lot, did a lot of global health. I can go into that later. And I think working alongside physicians in a global health way and living in different countries growing up, I was kind of very interested in global health, still am. And that kind of made me really want to find a way to help people. Yeah.
All right, and for me, it's actually pretty similar to what you guys said. Ultimately, like the first thing is that I was very interested in learning how the body works. I enjoyed my AP bio class, like physiology, and even in undergrad, all my bio classes. I think I was something that I always wanted to learn more about. And I think medicine is one of the fields where you get to do a large scope of things. You get to serve people, you get to interact with people, you get to teach. So you get to be a teacher, you get to be a coach, and it's always evolving. There's exciting things like research that you can always become a part of. I think it's one of those fields where you can have a large impact on people and get to grow as a person. So I think that was what was attractive for me.
Great answers. I like the similarity between them. Quick introduction. Mamdouh Hanna is now in the chat. He's one of the hosts of Coptic Health. Welcome, Mamdouh. Would you like to be part of the panel as well?
That's okay. I'm going to be on the sidelines.
Okay. Let's go on to the next question. Thank you guys for the first answer. So, a good one. Is medicine a promising career? Please tell us about it. Mark, would you be okay to start us off again?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. What's cool about medicine is one of the first things they tell you when you start school is that by the time you finish your 4 years of med school training, like 70% of what you learn isn't going to matter because there's new information, better drugs, better understanding of how the body actually works. So if you think about that perspective, this field is forever going to be growing. And if you look at a setback in the business lens on, people are always going to get sick. So there's always going to be a need to take care of people. So you get the personal growth and the economic growth in the business side as well.
I guess this is my turn. I'm gonna be brutally honest with my answer, just because I was, people were brutally honest with me when I was an undergrad at Irvine. So, I mean, the outlook is good. However, now looking through a COVID pandemic, I think, yes, it's a secure job. Being in the healthcare field is one of the more secure things in a pandemic time, but you're gonna have to think about your own like future, like what is important to you. So if you look at this question in a different aspect, would I have gone through this again just for my own future? You're gonna be old when you graduate. And mind you, I skipped a year of undergrad and went straight after that. So you kind of have to think of it like cost and benefit in that sense, if you're thinking about if it's actually worth a future in this career. But I don't want to deter too much from your young minds right now. But if you guys are kind of on the fence about this field, definitely think about it, shoot me an email, and that's kind of where I'm going to leave it off.
My perspective is I think medicine has a lot of different venues and a lot of different personalities. And for everyone, there is a little, there's tons of specialties, which I didn't even realize when I was applying within medicine that you can do. And your career in medicine can look very, very different depending on what you want to do. So I realized as time went on that medicine took up a lot of my time, a lot of sacrificing. And to me, I kind of, want a job that's 9 to 5. And honestly, that's why I'm doing endocrinology. I can talk about it later too, if anyone is interested to know. But if you want to have a 9 to 5 job, you're going to have a 9 to 5 job. If you want to be a surgeon and be up at 4 in the morning and be on call, you can have that lifestyle. So there's very different venues for everyone, and you'll always find jobs. This year is maybe an exception. There's the pandemic, I think, made it a little bit hard, but physicians usually it's very it's a great, I think, career if you're willing to dedicate the time and the effort to continue in that path. But yes, it's promising.
I think my opinion is very similar to what Lauren also said. Medicine is not just one thing. There are so many different specialties, and every specialty is different. If you're looking to be, if you want to work 100 hours a week, which I don't know why you would, and be a surgeon and be very dedicated to, you know, doing that, there's the opportunity to do so. But then there's also other specialties that give you like, you know, more of like a balance. So like psychiatry, radiology, endocrinology, all those good ones. And so I think medicine is very promising in terms of there are so many things you can do. It's an ever evolving field. So things have already changed so much in the last 20 years with like EMR, and now there's like artificial intelligence coming along. So I think medicine's ever evolving, and I think as a career, it is very promising. There's it's always gonna be, you're gonna have good job security, like everybody said. So yeah, medicine is a great career. You get to do so much.
You guys really spoke to the diversity of the medical field. Let's go on to the next question. What steps did you take in high school and undergrad to ensure that medicine was right for you? Great, please.
I actually like this question more than what does it take to have a good application, because before trying to get in, you have to figure out if this track is for you. Because like the other panelists said, this is something where you're going to donate the majority of your 20s, and that's usually like a fun time. But you're donating this period of your life to gather skills and knowledge that you hopefully use for a career. So what does it take, or what steps did I take in high school? Get good grades, study hard, but more importantly, try to spend some time physically in a clinic. See what it's like day to day. Get dirty, do the things that will force you to think of, can I do this for the rest of my life? Because if that motivates you, then you're going to be able to get through the really tough times and like thousands of tests we're going to take to stay in this career.
Okay, so for me, again, I would go back to saying I was obsessed with going into medicine, anything about biology, physiology, anatomy, obsessed with it since I was really young. In high school, I found a hospital that accepted, I think the youngest age to volunteer was like 13 or 14 at Cedars-Sinai. So I started volunteering at Cedars-Sinai, eventually worked my way up, became part of the teen advisory board, which I think is still continuing. We set it up and founded it. In high school, I did 0 period up at 7 after school classes, taking calculus at community college. So back home at 10 p.m., very long days. Again, I was obsessed with going into medicine. So this is what I thought I needed to do. This continued into undergrad, taking summer classes, kind of expediting my undergrad to do it in less time so I can just go into medicine right away without wasting my time because I already knew what I wanted. Doing global mission trips. For example, we flew to Nicaragua, stayed there for about 2 weeks serving, medically treating, prescribing, because there aren't really that many policies and for students to do that. What else did I do? I mean, again, more shadowing. I think I shadowed through the UC Irvine's ICE program, research. I mean, pretty much what you think of, what you would think you would need to get into med school. Again, I was obsessed with it. I actually enjoyed doing this. I didn't do it just to put it on my resume. This is something I was obsessed with. I loved it. And the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to learn more and get in detail with it. So that's kind of the things I did.
I think for me in high school, I just try to get good grades. Honestly, I don't think I knew in high school I wanted to do medicine. Maybe I had an idea, but I knew, like Midhat said, I liked biology. I wasn't good at physics. I was okay at math, but I really enjoyed my bio classes. That was about it. And then in undergrad, I did a physiology major. I went on my first mission trip to Ethiopia with the diocese. I did research, kind of like a work study job where I was able to get paid in undergrad at UCLA. That's where I went. And still work in a lab on brain tumors and glioblastoma. And then I also did some volunteering in the hospital. I actually found medicine to be very intimidating in undergrad, and I'm not gonna be like the one saying that I wanted to do medicine more than anything else in the world. I think, if I didn't do medicine, that typical question, what would you do? I love languages. I wanted to be an interpreter. Um, I didn't think it was the end all be all for me. I think people go into medicine for different reasons, whether it's to help people, whether it's the intellectual part of learning, whether it's the research. For me, it was really wanting to find a way, a job that's fulfilling where you can help others, and something that I still enjoyed. But yeah, I those were my experiences. I don't think they were many, but enough to get me through to like it and to decide to apply.
Yeah, so I think this is a pretty tough question because a lot of times you're gonna do some shadowing, you're gonna volunteer, you're gonna do like uh, your what everybody else is doing, and it's hard to know that you want to do this for the rest of your life after going to clinic a few times. Um, like even I'm going into radiology, and I'm choosing to do it for the rest of my life, but it's different when you shadow it or you know a little bit about it, and it's a whole different thing when you're actually doing it yourself. So same thing with medicine, like you can talk to people about it and it's completely different when you experience it yourself. But even though it's difficult, you kind of just have to immerse yourself in it, try to get as many experiences as you can. Like Mark and Jessica and Lauren said, definitely volunteer as much as you can. And I think the most helpful thing for me was talking to other people that were already in medicine. So I think Coptic Health is great because it gives you a platform to talk to other people who have gone through it, and just be open-minded and like listen to what people have to say and just what their day-to-day is like. Um, again, like until you actually go through it, you can never truly know because it's different to hear about it and to actually do it. But um, I encourage you guys to talk to other people and to really get to know what their experiences are like.
Also, just to add something on that, he gave a really good point. You want to talk to people who chose to pursue this field. And one thing that really helped me is I found people who started along the path of medicine and changed their minds at different points in their career, whether it's undergrad changing their major, medical school picking a different career, or in after becoming a physician and changing their specialty or just route altogether, and finding out why they made those decisions at each point in time and thinking about where future Mark would be and what he would want and see if I would align with those as well. So I always get both sides of the coin.
These are great answers. A lot you got to get in there in order to experience it. We're running short on time. Let's, if it's okay to ask, if we could be a little more expedited with our answers. But I really appreciate all the info you guys are coming up with. Thank you. How can you become a strong applicant prior to applying to medical school? This is one about the gap year. Please, Mark.
If I could pick one word to describe someone who's a strong applicant, it's synergy. There has to be, or at least not there has to be, but we look for a running theme. Like, why did you do these 2 internships, this one research project, and this one volunteer thing? Did you do it just because you wanted to check off boxes? Or do you have a passion, or do you have a story behind you that will carry you through like a long career? Because yes, you can do like, oh, I presented one poster, presented this, or did one thing here. But if you can find a way to have a running theme in your application or a sense of synergy where everything ties together, that's what makes a strong application when we look for interviews.
That's a good answer. I would probably say everything you said was great. I didn't have a gap year, so I don't really know. It's the same thing. Volunteer and find a specific niche that that you feel passionate about, and just immerse yourself in it. And they can kind of tell from just how you write and how you talk about it if it's something true or something you're checking off.
I didn't take any gap years. I went straight through, but I think to become a strong applicant, I agree what Mark said, because I interviewed also in med school applicants, and I think you can have a little bit of research and a little bit of shadowing and a little bit of everything. I think my application, I focused more on my like travel experiences, and because I grew up in Egypt, I grew up in Paris for a few years. I moved here as an immigrant, and I talked about global health. And so I remember on my interview, all I talked about was my travel experiences. No one really asked. I did research and I did all these other things, and no one cared to ask because it maybe, I don't know, maybe didn't stand out. But like I said, find something that defines you as a person, and that will really show through your application.
So yeah, getting into medical school, I think it's 40% GPA, 40% MCAT, and 20% like extracurriculars and all the other stuff. So ultimately, like academically, like you need to do well is what it comes down to. Like, you have to. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got to get into medical school, my brother told me, first 2 years, don't even think about extracurriculars. Don't think about like yeah, you can do it, but focus more on having a strong foundation in terms of like getting good grades, and then little by little you can add on extracurriculars and joining different clubs and going on a mission trip and all of that. But don't I think a mistake that a lot of people do while trying to make themselves a good applicant is they try to take on so much in undergrad, and from day one, like you're trying, and then your focus becomes split, and then you don't perform well academically. So my biggest advice to become a strong applicant is do well academically, which is focus on your classes first, and then add those things little by little.
I like those answers. Those are great ones. Thank you guys. What are some of the challenging aspects of getting into medical school? A little simple.
Yeah, I think every year has its own challenges, especially those who are applying now. But getting good grades, focusing for those 4 years, maybe longer, maybe shorter. I actually took 2 gap years, and so probably one of the biggest challenges when someone says no, and then asking yourself, is this still for me? Because I had like uncles telling me like, oh, have you tried pharmacy, or what about PT, or what about like any other field? Like we have a restaurant, like why not just take over the restaurant? So the hardest thing about getting in is really deciding, is this for you? Because that's the motivation that's going to help you pursue other things that will actually help your application.
We kind of touched on it a little bit throughout the other questions, and again, Mark touched on it just now. There's also like the financial aspect of it. It's not a very cheap application process. It can get pretty pricey pretty quickly. So that could be a challenge, especially during these times. I know that can be a particular challenge for some people. Again, and then the other thing Mit had already touched on the last question is just for some people who had a dip or blip in their GPA from one class that might have messed them up. I think once you have a dip in the GPA, it's very hard to go up. So that could be another challenge for you. I know during COVID, somebody was asking that there aren't very many opportunities now because everything's closed for volunteering. To be honest, I really don't know how that's going to look. But at the same time, you're not the only one that's being limited. It's the whole applicant pool is kind of faced with that same challenge. So it's kind of even the playing field, if you think of it like that. Hopefully in the next few months after the rollout of the vaccinations, we might start seeing some volunteer spots opening, but
Great. I think some of the challenging aspects is that, it's obviously competitive, but I would say, you have to keep an open mind. You have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone, ask people. I remember during the interview process, if I knew an Egyptian Coptic person who was in a med school, like in New York or Pennsylvania or whatever, I reached out to them. I didn't know them. I found them on Facebook. And I'm more of a shy person. So this was way out of my comfort zone, but you have to step out of your comfort zone. And actually touching base with some of these people was the most helpful thing, because they are at these schools you're interviewing at. You can ask them what the interview questions, what to expect. It's a huge help and it's a huge connection. And I think that's the point of workshops like this. It's to make these connections, which is very helpful. I think you have to take advantage and you have to keep an open mind and be willing to travel and go far. I went to medical school at George Washington in DC, across to the East Coast. I forgot to mention that. So that's why I bring up this point.
So in terms of challenges, for me, it's two main things. I think one thing that I thought was really challenging was a lot of times you'll end up comparing yourself to a lot of people that you're on the same journey with. Pre-meds are some of the most competitive people, as you guys know. Some people are even willing to step on you to get ahead of you or make you or put you down. And so I think one of the most important skills to learn early on, and I think this was helpful for me in undergrad and in medical school, is to put your blinders on and don't pay attention to what everybody else is doing. Because you're going to have classmates who are going to be like, oh yeah, like I already studied for the MCAT, and they're still like a freshman in college, right? So just do your best and try to, if you want to be competitive with yourself, but don't fall into the trap of comparing yourself to people. And then the other challenge is, Jessica touched on this earlier, trying to recover from failure, I think, is embracing failure, not to sound cheesy or anything, but there is going to be bumps in your undergrad journey. You might not do well in a class. You might have to take some time off, like family member passes away or you get sick, so on and so forth. You just have to realize it's a part of life. And some of the most successful people in life have failed, and you just get up and you try again, and you keep going. And if you know what you want and you want it really bad, you'll keep fighting for it. So don't get discouraged at any point.
Some really inspiring answers. Now the big question: how do you prepare for the MCAT? Please tell us about your MCAT experience, starting with Mark.
I took a Kaplan class. It was online, and I split the class with one of my best friends, and we did everything together. He's in anesthesia in Boston right now, so he's the homie. But yeah, so it was expensive, and we kind of just split the cost. We were close enough that I don't mind him looking at my scores and he didn't mind me looking at his scores, and we kind of just talk out going over the same problems together. But Kaplan was what I liked and what I used, and I appreciated it.
Okay. I didn't do any online courses. I just studied on my own. I just bought the book series. I forget which one. This is like I feel so old. This is like a really long time ago. And I just went to a place I knew I wasn't going to be distracted. I had family up in Portland at the time, and I didn't know anyone there. So just went there for about a month or two, studied straight. That's how I prepared for it. Yeah.
I also took like a Princeton review course in the summer between my junior and senior year, which is when I had to apply to go straight through, which kind of sucked, but got through it. It's a terrible exam. I'm not a good test taker, I have to say, so I'm not the best to give advice about the MCAT. So it was probably the weakest part of my application, and I'll leave it at that. So
I also took a Princeton review class, and I really highly recommend it. Also for the MCAT, there's kind of two ways that I see people going about it. There are people, you can either take a whole summer off and like you do MCAT as a full-time job where you're studying, like all you're doing is studying like 12 hours a day, very intense studying during those 3 months. And there are people that kind of like extend it throughout a whole year, and keep delaying their exam and so on and so forth. I highly recommend that the studying very intensely in a short period of time, like during, like you take one summer and you dedicate it, because then, because it becomes like a long process and it wears down on you. And you also forget information, like the longer of a period that you're doing it for, the more you're going to forget. And I think the less likely chance that you'll do better on it. So I say just take a whole summer, take a class and do it as a full-time job, and just, you have to be super military with yourself and just get it over with.
Wonderful answers. What is being in medical school like? Please.
The analogy we always hear at our school is it's like trying to drink water from a fire hydrant. You just kind of, you're thrown more information you can handle at the time, but everything feels like the hardest thing you've ever done until you move on to the next chapter. And then you look back, you're like, oh, that was easy. I made that, I survived. And then the next thing you do is, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And then you turn back a few years later, like, oh, that was super easy, and so on and so forth. So it's a growing pains, nothing but growing pains, but a fun struggle to say the least.
Yeah, I'm like trying to reflect 7 years ago now. Okay, yeah, being in med school, kind of like what Mark was saying, just drinking from a fire hydrant. You question your decision every single day of why you went in, and sometimes questioning your sanity for picking it, but you get through it, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It gets better after you finish med school.
I thought med school was fun. I think different schools have different vibes. I thank God went to a school where a lot of my classes, the first couple years were pass fail. So my class environment was very collegial, very friendly. It wasn't cutthroat. The third and fourth year were challenging, where we had to go out and do our rotations. Everyone was trying to impress. Everyone was trying to, like show off. On rounds, on presentations. So it was challenging, definitely, and you're trying to figure out what specialty to go into, but I also made some of my closest friends during that time. And so I think overall it was a very positive experience.
Medical school also, I thought med school was fun for the most part. It was a combination of fun, stressful at times. The first 2 years, you're really going to be studying a lot. Like you're going to spend 12 hours a day studying, but classes are pass fail. So there isn't this like intense pressure to get straight A's or anything like that. And I think it's very reasonable to pass. Like I think if you're studying and you're putting in, if you're consistently studying and you take care of yourself, and then it's not too bad. Third and fourth year is a lot of fun. Like you're finally getting to do what you love, like being a part of a team. It's overwhelming, of course, because you're learning a completely different language. You're having to, present like a history and physical, or like present a case in front of your attending or your residents. People are grading you. Everybody is judging you. It's difficult. I think that was the most difficult part of medical school, which is people are constantly evaluating you. But at the same time, you'll get to experience, you finally get to do what you signed up for, and see cool surgeries and procedures, and it's a lot of fun.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys. Let's answer a few more before we go to the chat questions. What specialty of medicine are you currently in, and what drew you to it?
I just wanted to shout out my med school because it's right on the water. It's like the prettiest place in the world. but I'm going into anesthesia. I broke it down. I'm like a cheesy dad joke type of guy. So I broke it down to the 3 Ps. 1 P is the patients. I wanted to work with people from the day they're born. So kids who have like congenital heart diseases to the people's last days. So with cancer pain and working to alleviate that. I wanted to do something that had both cerebral thinking, so understanding all the intricacies of the body, but also doing something with my hands. And the last P was the people. I wanted, like, I found, like, I liked hanging out with them. The OR was a really interesting place to be, and you get to sit down for those long surgeries, and I have basketball knees. So the practice, the people, and the patients kind of what sold me on it.
All right. So I'm currently doing family medicine. What drew me to that specialty? So I kind of kept an open mind while in med school, up until like 3rd, 4th year when you start doing rotations. And I did my family med rotation, and I just knew there are certain stereotypes that go along with some of the specialties. So I just fell into that niche with that rotation I did in family medicine. I just knew it was for me. I also like the aspect of just dealing with a wide range of problems, and you don't just deal with one patient, you actually see their whole family. So you really get to know the ins and outs and how their home life is. You're not just treating like their little medical disease, but everything, and encompasses everything. And what also drew me, oh, I like the work-life balance. I want the Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Like, I want to have my own family. So that was the other thing. So yeah, I kind of knew when I did the rotation. It was just the most interesting to me, and I actually enjoyed getting up to go to that rotation.
I think I didn't know how many different specialties are within medicine, and even what you could apply to until I actually got to med school. So if you have no idea what some of these specialties are, that's totally fine. I think in med school, you pretty much know if you like the operating room or you don't. I think that's where most people start. And then if you don't like the OR, sorry, Mark, I knew right away that I didn't want to do anything surgical. So that kind of takes down some of the specialties you can apply to. And then I was between OBGYN and internal medicine, and I didn't want to see female patients for the rest of my life. I wasn't ready yet. I wanted to kind of have a broad training. So I ended up doing internal medicine because it was broad, and only through my 2nd year of residency, I figured out endocrinology was awesome. And endocrinology is like study of hormones. So diabetes, thyroid, hypothalamic pituitary tumors, adrenal issues. It's pretty cool because you get to know all these organs, and still you have to learn about everything else. So it's narrow, but not too narrow.
Okay, I'm going into radiology, which is a very uncommon field for people to go in. Not a lot of people learn about it in med school. Not a lot of people get exposed to it. What I really like about radiology is ultimately I'm a nerd, and I like learning about different diseases. And radiology, you have to learn the body from head to toe. You have to know every single artery, every single bone, every single vein, and what it looks like when there's a certain pathology, like certain patterns, and like being able to look at a scan and find subtle clues that will lead you to a certain diagnosis. And you're basically a consultant for every single specialty. So you're gonna consult for neurosurgeons, internal medicine people. You interact with a wide variety of different specialists every day, and I think it's pretty cool. Also, with radiology, of course, you have less patient interaction, but the workflow is what I really like about it. You're doing one thing at a time. Like, you have one scan, like an MRI that you're reading. You're very focused on that, and then you move on to the next task, as opposed to other specialties where there is a little bit more chaos, which didn't fit my personality. And another thing I like about radiology is obviously the work-life balance. So if you want to be a diagnostic radiologist, you'll be working 8 to 5. If you want to be interventional radiology, you'll be working a lot more. But so another thing about radiology that people don't know is that you do a lot of procedures, whether you're a diagnostic radiologist or an interventional radiologist. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and I think that's why I chose it.
Wow, such unique specialties. Thank you guys. What are some of the typical daily procedures, tasks that you perform as a medical student, resident, or physician?
For me as a medical student, probably the task I do the most is I'm in Hawaii where there's a lot of shorter people. So I get things off high shelves more than I do anything else. But it's a lot of kind of like Sherlock Holmesing your way through a situation, hearing a patient tell you their story, and from what you hear, trying to figure out the right questions to ask to get the rest of the information you need to see if the hypotheses you're thinking are true or false. And with every new piece of data, you get to readjust that pathway and hopefully come to the right conclusion of, I think you have this because X, Y, Z, and to best take care of you, I think we need to do X, Y, and Z. So just retraining that process every time we go through and see a new patient.
Typical daily tasks and procedure. So as a medical student in New York, where I trained rotations, I did a lot of blood draws just because the nurses in New York didn't do it. That's another thing you should look for when you're applying for future residency places, what tasks you would be doing. That's not typically a task a medical student or resident or physician should be doing. But as a student, I was doing a lot of blood draws, a lot of note taking, history taking, past medical history, surgical history, just kind of an interview with the patients. As a resident now in California, in terms of tasks, it's pretty much the same with interviewing a patient. You just have to do that for all patients you see. Some of the procedures I get to do are central lines, arterial lines, knee injections, skin tag removal, skin biopsies, Nexplanon placements, IUD insertions. There really is no particular end to it. So I'm probably missing several dozen procedures I can't think of right now. And then for the company that I signed on for, I can choose to do these procedures or refer next door to the local dermatologist that's in our same building. So it really depends on what you enjoy. You can tailor to what you have interest in.
I have to say during like COVID, I do a lot of sitting in front of the computer, talking to patients on the phone because a lot of our clinic appointments are on the phone. I talk to a lot of families on the phone because families can't come in and visit, and they want updates from doctors. I, rotate through different things. Like we do weeks in ICU, weeks on general medicine, weeks in the emergency room, cardiology, kidney doctors. We do all of it in internal medicine. So it's pretty broad. It doesn't get boring. It switches every couple of weeks, a different rotation. So it's pretty diverse.
So as a med student, your daily your day to day is gonna basically, you're gonna get there pretty early in the morning. You're gonna go see your patients on your own, collect some history from your patients, check in on them, and then you're gonna spend the majority of your morning preparing a presentation for your attending during rounds. So rounds is really like where you get to show off as a med student. So you'll give like a 10 to 15 minute presentation about your patient. Your job as a med student is really it's very passive in terms of you're not really like, you don't feel like you're helping a lot of people out. Like you're trying to learn as much as you can. You're trying to you're trying to collect histories and things like that. As a resident, you're actually like putting in a lot of orders, you're running codes. If someone's dying, you're doing CPR on them, you're doing procedures, like all the procedures that Jessica mentioned. It's a lot more fun because your day is going to go by a lot faster because you're actually getting to prescribe medication and help people in different ways. So yeah, I think that's the day-to-day in med student and resident life.
Wonderful. Let's do one more question before going to the chat questions. So what are some of the challenges of being a physician?
There's so many. I think the time commitment is one, because there's so many times where I spent like a 12-hour day in the hospital and I missed a birthday party, I missed dinner with the family, or going on trips, or I remember studying and watching my friends go to Coachella and missing out on that aspect of life because we're so focused on what we're learning and what we're doing. But one thing that I didn't realize would affect me as much was experiencing a death of a patient. I spent 2 months in the ICU during COVID, and like picking yourself up after doing everything you could for someone and then them not making it, and then having to do the same thing against the same disease in a similar patient. It's like trying to pick yourself up and pull through to, again, give that next patient the best chance they can to survive.
Yeah, kind of to touch on what Mark is saying, that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is having to deal with death all the time and be comfortable around it and with it. I think, me personally, I think going in this field, as much as I was obsessed with it until I came into it, I think it hardened me. It made me become a little bit distrustful of my patients. Again, I picked this because I love the physiology and I love the community medicine. That's why I was volunteering so much. That's why I went abroad. That's why I picked the county hospital to train at. But it also made me a little bit hard on the outside, a little bit distrustful of my patients, which isn't always a good thing to have when you're going into clinic, and you can't think that way. You're going to be missing a lot of things. And I think that's just residency itself that kind of came about with this challenge. So some other challenges that I personally found difficult was just dealing with the bureaucracy of medicine. There is a lot of non-medical things that you as a physician will have to be dealing with, a lot of insurance issues, a lot of social things, and it becomes very difficult to treat the patient for what they really need. So those are some of the things on the top of my head. There's like a ton more. I think Lauren mentioned there's like a lot of paperwork stuff in the last question. I feel like you're with more paperwork than you are with patients, but yeah, that's it.
I think for me, like the hours are really long. Like Mark mentioned, you miss out on a lot of life events. I remember first year of residency, my brother was getting married, and like just finding a weekend day to go to my sister-in-law's like bachelorette or whatever. Like I had to drive to San Diego and drive back a couple hours later, like just to be there. So you have to make a lot of sacrifices, obviously, to be in this field, but also the reward is amazing. Like, I think even just through this year being in the pandemic, a lot of people in the medical field are so burnt out and jaded and tired. But when you, like Mark mentioned, I think when you're there with a patient who's dying and you're there to comfort the families, and when even when you feel like you didn't help the patient, but family is so thankful towards you, and just having that type of reward and to be there. I've had moments where I've prayed with my patients, I've prayed for my patients, and then you remember why you did medicine in the first place. Also, one thing I want to mention, that you don't have to give up the things you love outside of medicine to be in medicine. So I have friends who love singing, love playing the guitar, like traveling, and you will have time to do those things. I don't want the question to be like very sad and end on a sad note. And like I mentioned, I love languages, and one of the I minored in Spanish in undergrad, and I chose to be in a hospital where not like 80% of my patients speak Spanish. So I actually speak probably more Spanish during my day than English, and that's something that I really, really enjoy. And so I was able to find a way to merge those two things: my love for languages and medicine. So you can also do that. You'll find ways to do that.
So my answer is pretty similar to what the other panelists said. I think the most challenging part of being in medicine is like taking care of yourself. When you get to medical school and residency, you're gonna have so many seminars about wellness. Like a lot of people get depressed or burnt out or anxious because you're working so many hours and you don't get to do a lot of the things that you love to do. But I really, you know, a lot of people write it in their application like, oh, I'm well-rounded, blah, blah, blah. I really do recommend that you do your best to pick that, you know, to do that from as early as you can, to exercise as much as you can, and to make it a habit out of it. Just like Lauren said, you know, just because you're going into medicine, it doesn't mean you have to give up those things. But it is harder to get those things done, and you really have to make an effort to be well balanced and to take care of yourself mentally. The other challenge of being a physician, in my opinion, is the culture of medicine. Um, Often, and this is very specialty dependent, but sometimes there's a toxic culture in medicine. Everybody's being overworked, everybody's stressed. Some people will be rude to you. You're if you're sick, it's not, like, not okay to take a day off, like unless you're intubated and in the hospital, like you go to work sick. And so there's a lot of pressure, and then you have a lot of your co-physicians that are going to be judging you, and everybody's evaluating you at all times. And so those two things are the most challenging parts of being a doctor, in my opinion.
Well, there's some great answers. For the next set of questions, we're going to take from the chat. Not everyone needs to answer all these questions if you don't have an answer. If you do want to answer the question, just come off mute. Hoping at least one of you guys will be willing to answer it. This first question, Jessica did touch on it a little bit. Maybe you can add a little more about shadowing during the COVID season. What are some recommendations you have, and whether or not you'd consider virtual shadowing appropriate for some of these students?
The idea of shadowing is to physically be there, so I'm not really sure how a virtual shadowing would give any benefit to either party. This is maybe a chance for you to be a little creative. For example, I know someone who started doing something else to kind of get their volunteer/work experience, would be like volunteering at mobile clinics for those patients who are kind of stuck in the rural areas that can't drive out to see their physicians now that their local physician has cut their clinic hours because of COVID for some reason. They don't have access to a phone. Maybe trying to touch base with a volunteer service in that way, making care packages. I don't know, you just have to be creative. It's a really tough time for a lot of us, but until things open up in person for you guys, we'll just have to be creative with how you can get that experience.
Sorry, I don't have anything to add, but I have to run to my next round of clinic today. So I want to say I appreciate everyone for being on the panel and all the people coming in. If you guys have any questions, like email me or message me on Instagram. Like random FaceTimes are useful and helpful. So anyway, bye guys, aloha.
Thank you,
Bye,
Mark.
Mark. Thanks for tuning in.
Okay, thank you for that, Jessica. That was actually a really great answer for that one. Trying to be creative to get your shadowing experience in. This next one's was touched on a little bit by Mithat, about a student who spent the first 2 years studying and wants to finish strong the last 2 years. What do you recommend on how can they start getting those extracurriculars in, or to make themselves a stronger applicant outside of academia?
I can answer that question. You want your application to have like a wide variety of different things. So there's only like a set number of things you can do. So you want to do research for sure. And you don't need to get published. Like all you need to show is that you're intellectually curious, you're interested in research, you're excited about it, and just to be able to talk about it at interviews. A lot of your institutions will have like poster opportunities. Like we had something called Excellence in Research, where you make a poster of what your lab is doing. And so I think being able to do a presentation or a poster is really nice to put on your application. Another thing that you guys can do is anything that involves like diversity in medicine, especially if you're Egyptian, that's something that you can highlight in your application, that you come from a diverse background. So I was personally involved in something at UCI that was called Diversity in Medicine, and a lot of people are interested in that. What else? You want to do something that a mission trip is pretty cool if you have the opportunity to go on a mission trip. And to serve tutoring with something, teaching in medicine is important. As a resident and as an attending, you're going to be doing a lot of teaching, and so showing that you're interested in tutoring or teaching is also an opportunity, is a good one. And then other community service things like feeding the homeless, whether it's something, even if it's just something that's fun, like coaching basketball or anything like that. So just have a wide variety of those things. Definitely try to address one from like leadership, one from research, service, and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Mithat, for that answer. That was really great. The next one wants to know about your majors, and they wanted one other one wants to know whether or not you recommended double majoring. Anybody have any comment about double majoring or recommended majors?
I can take that one. I did choose ultimately my major to be something science related because I figured it will just help me know and I love the anatomy and physiology, so I picked it. But I love doing a minor in Spanish. So it wasn't a double major, but I did choose to do a minor. And a lot of people are like, why would you do Spanish? Like, you're going to bring down your GPA, like that's extra classes. And most people at UCLA who did a Spanish minor were native speakers. So why would you compete with native speakers? And why would you write 14-page papers in Spanish? And all those things, people will put you down and try to get you to not do what you love. If you love it, do it. So if you find a like there's a subject that you love, like English or something, and you like, I'll do bio, but I really, really want to do something else, do it. But don't go do 2 science majors. It just doesn't stand out, and it really might bring down your GPA. And like Mithat said, don't do things and overwhelm yourself with things. Undergrad is hard enough. Getting through midterms is hard enough. And so you want to make sure that you're being selective. If you love it, you'll do well in it. But if you're doing it just to fill a quota, don't do it.
Great answer. We have 3 minutes left. Let's try and knock out 2 more questions. A quick one. What do you think about going to medical school abroad? And anybody have any comments on abroad medical schools?
I can answer this one. I went to medical school abroad. I did it because I didn't want to wait a year to apply to US schools. So do I recommend it? I mean, I was in a rush to expedite everything. If you have the chance to, have the time, you have, the means to apply to the US schools, I would suggest that you try that first. But if you already know what you want and you're kind of open to the idea of being anywhere and you're more adventurous and you're okay with leaving home and being in a foreign place and being on your own, then it could be a possibility for you. It does come with its own challenges. So you have to do your research. Not every medical school you go to abroad is going to be accredited. Not every medical school you go to abroad will offer federal aid from the US. You have to think about expenses and traveling, about being alone and isolated. I happened to go with one of my best friends, so it ended up working out perfectly fine. But you're gonna have to weigh your own pros and cons list, which is what I did before I applied. So just a quick answer, but it goes into way more detail than that.
That was a great answer. There's another question about a separate topic. What do you think about the type of personality traits necessary to succeed in medicine? And also, do you need to be STEM inclined to do well in medical school? It's like a 2-parter.
So in terms of like personality traits, I think like Lauren said earlier, there's so many different like specialties of medicine, and so many different personalities can thrive in medicine. Certain traits that you need to have to succeed in medical school and medicine in general is you have to be very disciplined. So you have to be able, you don't have to be the smartest person. I don't think medicine takes like any like hyper intelligence or anything like that. You just need to be able to sit down and like study for a long period of time, to be able to say no to other people who are going out and to prioritize studying. So I think that's one of the most important traits. And then I think being persistent and being able to deal with failure. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of challenges, and if you give up after a small failure, it'll be hard to keep going. So I think those are the two most important traits to succeed in medicine.
Well, that was a great answer. Thank you, Matt, for that. The next question was, here we go, from Instagram. What desensitization techniques for people sensitive to blood or guts? Anyone know how to answer that one? Who did the needle draws?
In New York hospitals, as students, you'll be doing a lot of like the phlebotomy type work. So desensitization to blood and guts. I guess just be exposed. Try first watching it on YouTube. Like I used to watch those medical shows while I ate. I know it sounds so weird, but I never got grossed out by it. So I guess you could start there, where something is like not tangible, not in front of you. But just so you know, there's so many different specialties, so you don't have to deal with blood and guts at all if you don't want it. So you can find a field within medicine that you won't have to put yourself through that. But it's going to take time to get to that level, right? You have to go through it. But try watching stuff on, medical shows on YouTube for basic procedures and see how you do. And just don't do it by yourself. Maybe have someone with you just in case you feel faint.
That was a great question. We are out of time. I'll leave this up to the panelists. We do have some more questions going. If anyone has to go, you can go. But if any of you panelists would like to stay and answer a few more questions, or is anyone available to stay a little longer?
I actually have to go, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Feel free to reach out. My contact information is in the chat. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that way. But it was nice doing this. Thank you so much for hosting this. And if you guys need anything, reach out to me, please.
Thank you,
I'll replace him. I can replace him if need be.
Thank you, Mandua.
You guys are getting an upgrade.
Yeah.
Cute.
The next one, one person really wanted to ask about medical interviews. I know this is an in-depth question, but if any of you can remember back to your medical interview, that would be great. Or residency interviews.
So interviews, I've done interviews and I've gone through the interview process. So, and I think a lot of us have. And honestly, most of the time, and I think the other panelists will agree, is it's really laid back process. They just want to get to know who they're going to add to the class. So they want someone that is going to be able to get along with other people. So you just want to make sure that you're going to do well in their school and in whatever setting that they have. So I would just say, like, a lot of the questions are just like, hey, tell me about yourself. You said you like biking. Tell me about like that. They're obviously going to ask you why you chose medicine. That's an obvious question that they're going to ask everybody. Some of the challenges that you had in undergrad, things like that. So it's a lot of like very general questions. You should definitely do mock interviews and prepare that way. And you should go through the questions. That there are a lot of them. If you search online, like medical school interview questions, you should have an idea, an answer of it, but don't be robotic. Just be yourself. Like, just talk about it. They just want to see how you talk. I'm in psychiatry, and so just in case, because I haven't introduced myself, and it's important for us, again, in every single process, is that people are themselves and they can be comfortable. So because that's how you're going to deal with your patients.
And Joy had another great session before about like interview questions that are asked. So if you guys want reference to that, maybe she can send it to you guys if that's an option, Joey. But if you have specifically like you're in that process and what do they ask you on interviews and things like that, that's also a great resource through Coptic Health that was done before.
Wonderful. I see only two more questions. The next one's about non-traditional students. Anyone have any comments on those choosing medicine as a second career?
Very common. I would say it even puts people sometimes at an advantage. I think it's less and less common for people to go straight through from undergrad to medical school. A lot of when I interviewed people in medicine, I've had people who had gone to the military and decided they want to do medicine. I've met people who were physical therapists and decided to do medicine. People who were English teacher. One of my best friends in med school was a high school teacher and a football coach in a high school before he decided to do medicine. So it's actually pretty welcomed as long as you have a compelling story as to why you decided you want to do medicine, and never put down the other specialty or the other job that you've done. It's a big no-no. Like, don't say physical therapy is not challenging enough, or I found people in physical therapy, but like never put down another career path or education, but you have a good answer as to why you decided to do medicine.
I really like that answer. Thank you, Lauren. The next one I see is, what if, God forbid, you fail the MCAT? Anyone want to comment on the MCAT again? It's a great question.
Fail is a subjective answer. Don't be too harsh on yourself. I would say if you get a bad score, if you're motivated, you can retake it. I don't know now if schools look at your old score and compare it, or if that's not submitted, maybe someone can update me. It's been a while for me too. But you have the option to retake it. And then even if you retake it and you don't do well, as long as you improve. But like I said, I think for the most part, you're allowed to have one section in your application that sucks for the most part. You know, it's not a rule, but for me, it was the MCAT. I had stellar GPA. I had a great personal statement. My MCAT was terrible, and I'm like not ashamed to say that. I'm not a good test taker, and my MCAT score sucked. And I actually thought I was not going to get into med schools because of my MCAT. So don't let that deter you. But if you think it's a failed score, even though I don't think that exists, and you can have a chance to retake it.
Definitely. And I think upon that too, if your scores are not as competitive, make sure you apply widely. If you really want to go into medicine, you're going to apply to every medical school that exists, even if it costs a lot of money. So I know it's just a thing, you know. So if you're dedicated to that, you're just going to add to that debt. What's another, you know, I don't know, whatever, thousands of dollars to whatever you're going to have. So if you really want to go into medical school, you should definitely apply widely if your scores are not competitive.
That's great. So these are all wonderful questions. Are there any more questions anyone would like to ask before we go? We have a few more seconds. Okay, then. Looks good. Thank you guys for the wonderful panel talk today. You were all very informative. I really appreciate all the resources as well. And thank you for all the participants who did join. I'm going to stop recording, and thank you all and end the meeting.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
All right, bye everyone. Take care.